skin. How could love wear so thin? I'm sinking in the hollow ground. Nothing can stop me wanting you somehow. I won't let it die. I can feel you when you're not around. When the night gets cold, I won't be alone. We won't be
Tonight, sim car action makes its way over to Daytona Beach, Florida, as we see how drivers fare out with the second endurance round of the season. It's the Penguin RC Simulation Grand Am Series here on FTFGG. I'm Justin Prince, Joey Atterbury with you, with Gary Sexton, the production booth, as we get ready, all set to go for today's action, Joey.
Super excited to be here. You mentioned it, another endurance round, this time at the Daytona road course, a place that everybody knows, home to the 24 hours of Daytona, a fitting endurance round out here. And something else I'm noticing here, look at the sky, already turning dark. We got the lights on here at the stadium.
Lots to talk about tonight, but first things first, when it comes to tonight's action, the drivers already getting themselves situated for tonight's race. Let's look at how they'll start here tonight in regards to our 22-car field for our 90-minute race. As these drivers make their way to the field tonight, you have a grand total of 6 total prototypes, and the rest GT3s. And in turn, Flynn Lazier leads the way for those cars tonight, with Robert Lowry and Blake Reynolds the top 3, Chris Wetz and Justin Malillo the top 5 overall and top 5 in class. Of note, Aaron Beaver did not set a time in the class, starts 6th in the class. So they are instructing Beaver to make it to the front. Those up towards the front overall in the GT3s tonight, Christian Yunwall leading the way overall in points for the entire series currently in first. Cody Crosgrove, John Marchbanks, along with Ray Kingsbury, and Justin Nazier, top 10 overall tonight, Joey.
Yeah, in 11th place overall, which is 6th in the GT3s, Kevin Fanning. And then we have our AM pole sitter here, 7th overall in GT3s. That's Brian Son. Marwin Mofta, 2nd place AM, going to be lining up there in 13th. Paul Mikolajczyk here, 14th. Trevor Greenfield, Tim Brokaw, and a few more GT3 competitors in the AM class. JJ Wang, Daniel Coletta, Gary Freeman, Josh Ondo, and Tim Taplin.
That's a look top to bottom at the running order here tonight for SimCar action as we get all set for our second endurance round. Now, how it works is there is a competition caution around the midway point or so in this race, a virtual safety car, as it's called in SimCar competition. The last time we had an endurance race was in the French countryside. This is our second and final opportunity to race in an endurance round, and a second and final opportunity in turn to be able to score double points for this round.
Always a good thing. Got to keep it together for a lot longer out there. These competitors, they just came out of Sonoma in the other format, the sprint format, where you've got the short 15-minute plus the 45-minute, and completely different mindset here going into the 90 minutes at Daytona. We're going to see that safety car, like you mentioned, and also pit stop strategy come into play.
By the way, drivers leading the way into the championships for tonight's action. Entering Daytona, Christian Yunwall leading the way in the GT3s. Also have Ray Kingsbury within range for the championship. About a 100-point split amongst them. Meanwhile, when it comes to the Prototypes Pro class, or Prototypes in general, Flynn Lazier, Blake Reynolds separated by just 1 point entering the night, despite the fact Lazier missed the first round of the season at Road America. We also have Nate Stewart, who's not here tonight, who entered the night third in those point standings. Brian Son, the leader in the AM standings. With that, the drivers are all set to go. Green flag is out. We're underway from Daytona. And a clean start for the Prototypes, a slow clock catch-up for Aaron Beaver. Everyone else zipping their way into the infield section as the GT3s make their way to the start.
Christian Youngwall with a nice jump over Cody Crosgrove heading into turn one. Really is between Nasir and Kingsbury side by side for that third place position. Couple more cars fanning in through turn one, but zipper through. Nice start for the top 5 in GT3.
A clean start for everybody so far here tonight. Keep an eye on how the drivers play things out when it comes to the strategies in the pace. Already a lot of discussion about the BOP for this race. We'll have to see how things play out, though. When it comes to this fight, Robert Lowry keeping up a lot of consistency as of late, really picking up some pace in his car. Lowry nearly spins it on cue.
Those cold tires can be really tricky here at Daytona. The track temperature, the air temperatures are pretty far down right now, so just got to take a breath here in these opening laps, get everything up to temperature, get them all warmed up.
Now, interesting enough, Lowry has had a best finish of 5th in the class so far, but has shown flashes of this pace throughout the campaign since the switch over for the grouping to this car. Lowry looking to see if he can settle up. Blake Reynolds looking to find a way to drop behind already in this group.
I love that gyro onboard cam with 31 degrees of banking here. And let me tell you, it's gotten a lot smoother over the years. I used to race the old Daytona when it was all bumpy, and when they repaved it, it is nice and smooth. But trust me, you do have to tilt your head like that.
Already keeping things calm as we look at the top bar. As mentioned, Lazier leading the way so far. Not a surprise to you that the pace says a mistake from Lowry checks them up for second again. And that seems to be a common trait already. Drivers getting loose. Drivers having issues being able to run through the horseshoes.
And we're still in the warm-up phase. You know, this is only lap 2 of the race, and it seems like Robert Lowry is struggling just to get the car underneath him. Blake Reynolds, on the other hand, seems to have the car setup dialed in, whether that's been practice or just the settings that they've got, and he's on the attack.
The thing is, though, do you plan in this type of a race to go pounce, 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 or do you think more of the fuel pressure? Keep in mind, there are fuel limits in this respective series. Drivers were informed about those limits coming in tonight. For reference, in the GT3s, it's about 70%. But in that note, it's also going to be important to think about, you have to think about pit stops. Here's that grouping of GTs, for example, right now.
Yeah, looking back, I believe this is Brian Son, Ray Kingsbury in the top 5 here in this GT3 battle. And something else to note, Justin, Christian Youngwall, right? He just walks away every single time in these sim car races in the GT3 class, but looks like here at Daytona, a little bit of an outlier. We got Cody Crosgrove actually tucked up in the slipstream of Christian Youngwall.
Speaking of Youngwall, he spun around in front of the bus stop, right out of the exit of Le Mans. Christian Youngwall off in the grass from the overall lead in the class. Unbelievable.
I'm sorry, and look at this. He jumps the curbs. Coming in, I believe it's the second apex curb he clips here. Jumps the car, gets unsettled, the third one, and has a big tank slapper. Does he keep it off of the wall? Looks like no damage. He might have escaped this.
That's the biggest mistake he's made all season, mind you. His worst finish, third, as, well, that's a camera. Here's a better one.
It was that third apex, Justin. He jumped it, it unsettled the car, and oh my goodness, look at how close his competitors would have taken off of the nose.
Very lucky to say at the very least for the simply inspired local racing machine. Third in the team standings, led by Yunwall. Trevor Greenfield, just as that happened, had also just towed the cars. So 2 of their cars with problems already. And Yunwall with his biggest adversity of this entire season, dead last on track now. Second to dead last in class, in fact, to Gary Freeman.
And at Daytona, that can be a tough mountain to climb. You know, you've lost the draft, but the only good thing is this happened in the first 5 minutes of the race. Just pick up the pieces right now. You don't have any damage. Just get back going, and you never know what can happen. We haven't even seen the classes intermix yet.
That's going to be a major part of tonight's race. Traffic management for the prototypes. Only a few of them, but lots more of the GTs. Lance Nazir right now third, make it second I should say now in the class, for example here. Lots of speed showcased by Nazir in the starts. We've seen him throughout the campaign. They're already breaking away just about from Kevin Fanning and company in this Mercedes AMG. Already a lot of talk about this car for today.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth. You mentioned the BOP earlier, and Nasir's in the only Mercedes that we've got in the GT3 field. It's pretty BMW heavy. There's a couple Audis. I see one Ferrari out there, but Lance definitely the outlier here in this Mercedes.
When it comes to Nazir, one previous start, a third place run at the French countryside few weeks ago. Of note, John Marchbanks also having technical issues in the 30 car, so he is also off the main lap. A terrible race. Simply inspired machines tonight. Pressure is on though, Fanning able to catch up a lot here in this grouping. Fanning having one of his better starts to a race so far here tonight.
Gonna be right in the draft, in the toe of that Mercedes, right behind Nasir. See if the BMW, what kind of wing angles, what kind of top speed differences there are between these two German makes out there. And doesn't look like Kevin is really drawing in on that Mercedes. Now that could be him lifting a little bit, doing some of this fuel conservation that is so popular in the endurance rounds. And honestly, I wouldn't blame him if he was doing that if they are similar on pace.
Few minutes in, we'll see what Fanning does. A lot closer in terms of the draft this time. Having us up the BMW field, Fanning coming off a podium, his best finish of the season over at Sonoma in the feature. Outside taken, inside defended well.
And you were making the comment that Fanning looked better through kind of the infield coming out onto the oval the last time, and I was noticing that BMW didn't close up too much on that Mercedes. I wonder if just the top-end speed differences and downforce level differences are favoring the BMW more here in the infield and the Mercedes more on the top end on the banking.
A little bobble from Nazir. Still hold on to it, though. It's all according this entire grouping up. Ray Kingsbury, mind you, third car in the pack, looking for the back end of the Mercedes AMG. Lost touch to Crossgrove by a few seconds. Penning, just nowhere to go it seems. And once again, this goes back to the big picture play. Do you save or do you go?
And not only that, but if you get past in the bus stop here, you don't get the good exit. You kind of open yourself up to getting repassed right over again. So Daytona, just an interesting track in how you approach it, how you race it. And one other thing that I'm seeing here is that with these two getting close, it's also brought Ray Kingsbury right into that battle and Brian Sawn hanging out back there.
Meanwhile, Flynn Nazir starting to reach the back end of lap traffic for the GTs. They're pulling away by 1.8, 1.9 seconds from his teammate from SimRC. And a little bit of a checkup for Reynolds. Having to avoid a lot of the traffic there. They are the top team in the points this season as the GDP points leaders as a grouping. But Blake Reynolds had a lot of expectations for tonight, really hoping to make it a victory lane tonight over Flynn Lazir.
Well, you saw he got checked up there. That allowed Lowry to come in, and look at this. We got 3 cars battling in GT3. This
Trouble
is
in front of the leader. Oh, one of the Ferraris ends up getting a punt around. Paul Mikolajczyk making contact and spinning around the other newcomer tonight for the AM class, Daniel Coletta, right in front of the prototype leaders.
You had an eye on this watching those GTP leaders, and I think that Daniel Coletta actually lost it by himself here in turn 1. We're going to get this replay. You see the Audi already really loose, and I think he just stands on the brakes to try to stop the spin, and unfortunately Mikolajczyk was right there already.
And that's one of the tough parts of this track. You lose a lot of potential grip there.
I love the F-Zero cam.
I mean, it is a camera. Let's take a look a little bit from more so easy view.
Talk about some great avoidance there. And when you're those GTP cars, it always seems like you gotta be on your tippy toes, ready for anything.
Little Lazier, by the way, despite all that, is up by 4 seconds all of a sudden. Well, you can tell how that management through that incident worked out. Barely lost time, side by side, building up just up the road. In fact, though, Ray Kingsbury, Lance Nazier, Kevin Fanning all scrapping it out. Flynn Lazier needing to find a way through, though. Looks like they'll give him the inside. Yes, Lazier underneath at least 2 of them.
Looks like Kingsbury knows the fellow Penguin car is down to the inside, leaves plenty of space for Lazier, and there he goes rocketing off towards the dog leg. But I'm happy we swapped over to this P2 GT3 battle. I know it separated out with Nasir just kind of gapping it out a little bit, but between Nasir, Kingsbury, and Fanning, they have been drafting back and forth on these previous laps.
Oh, and Blake Reynolds is stuck now. Blake Reynolds had gained 2 seconds from the initial pass-through for Lazier. Now he's lost it back. Lazier making sure to keep an eye on the inside line. Reynolds able to get by, but Robert Lowry, the big benefactor out of all this too, has caught right back up to Blake Reynolds with all the checkups.
Curious to see if he's close enough to make a move. Doesn't look like he's going to be there going into the chicane. It's more going to be Kevin Fanning here chasing Ray Kingsbury through that bus stop, or what is it now? Is the Le Mans chicane, I believe.
Named in union with the track based in the French countryside a couple of years ago. So, it is a racetrack with a lot of history, of course, as talked about there, but a lot of history amongst these two circuits. In fact, think about it this way. When there was that branch off in the 1980s and 90s between the American-focused and the Europe-focused circuits, a lot comes to mind where Daytona basically took that American 24-hour title in terms of its premier event, and then you had its cooler name counterpart, no more so, for its successes in Europe.
Look at this. Ray Kingsbury getting really aggressive on the racetrack while we got the 71 of Chris Wetz trying to make his way through, just like we saw Flynn Lazier. He's going to get stuck between these GT3 cars. Oh, got to make a move to the inside. Nice avoidance there.
Wetz able to get around, and some trouble for Marwin Mofta, the second best AM driver entering the lap. Mofta's in the grass. Another driver with troubles. This time it's one of the Dirty Sport cars.
Unfortunate for the 191 here. Watch the gray Audi, second in line. Goes down to the inside of that Ford. I believe that's JJ Wong out there and gets tipped around. I think there was room down there. It's just so tricky. You got all the weight on the nose of the car, and if you get a little bit of contact, you can actually spin around quite easy.
And Mofta was trying to keep up with Brian Son, who is just up the road a bit from that pack. Instead, Mofta still now third in class, but a far ways back of Tim Brokaw from that situation. But as mentioned, in the AM points lead entering the night, Brian Son about nearly 40 points up over Mofta. Mofta getting the edge in points just once this season, or really once in terms of being in the top 10 overall this season. Brian Son started off strong. He's been able to have enough consistency to keep scoring points to stay in the lead.
Doing a nice job, especially in that AM class, and actually right in front of Brian. I think I saw Ray Kingsbury finally make the move on Nasir in that 007 car. So Ray Kingsbury in his BMW move him up into second place in GT3.
Confirm the move has been made, but the question is for how long? That was down the front straightaway for reference. So with some of the Penguin RC machines on the prowl, it so happens to be 3 of the top 4 GTs in Munstach grouping. Still keeping on that battle amongst the prototypes. Blake Reynolds starting to get the pace down now that there's a little bit more clean traffic. A 131.1 last time, 132.3 last time for Flynn Lazier. A true test more so this lap because they haven't had to deal with a single lap car.
It's going to be ebb and flow. There's going to be times that you're going to have plenty of clean track out there. There's going to be times that you're just intermixed in these GT3 battles. And speaking of, you called it. You know, Ray Kingsbury, sure, he got around Nasir, but for how long? Because the Mercedes, it's not given up. It looks like a very good car tonight.
An extremely strong car. Nasir, in fact, very quick in a straight line by at least 4 miles an hour already on a NASCAR 4. That's how quick this car is in draft right now. Looks like Nasir preferring to save, though, rather than push.
Yeah, right tucked up underneath that rear wing. And you mentioned he's doing fuel save. So when he catches that BMW, he lifts off of the gas. He's not burning as much fuel. And the whole idea there is that when you come into pit lane, that means you put less fuel in the tank because you have more in there. And that means a shorter pit stop time.
That came into play big time last time out and talking for today when it came to what happened in 8th Stewart after the craziness in the sprint race. Had 5 gallons less in the tank than he needed to get to the end. Trouble in the shoehorn. Aaron Beaver off in the grass. He's to the inside of everybody as they make their way through. Beaver now stopping in the middle of the horseshoe.
I was noticing that Beaver and Melillo going into this lap were quite close, and I don't know if you watch much of this IMSA racing in real life, Justin, but a lot of the drivers are having troubles with the feel of the brakes, and that looks a lot like what happened in the 97 there. It looks like a rear lockup just struggling with the brakes.
Remember, this was a driver, and this is a driver, a part of a team who switched cars at the start of the season to this manufacturer, DBR Racing. Beaver has elected to tow the car as a result of that situation. And even when it came to the endurance race for the 24 hours of Nürburgring on iRacing this past weekend, while the prototypes weren't there, even the GTs struggled to even maintain the proper car control, where, I'm not sure if you've seen the ticker for those top split races, Joey. 5 at best finished on the lead lap in each class. That is a rarity in iRacing circumstances.
Yeah, no, it is. And, you know, there can be a lot of attrition out there. And I think just mistakes also, they can compound and they can add up. They can take away races, and they can definitely make those cars not finish on the lead lap. And one car that I'm actually impressed with tonight, ooh, look at this move around the outside of the bus stop. Wow, that was something else for Blake Reynolds. And I was just going to mention him. We always mention Flynn Lazier and his rocket ship-like pace, but this number 66 really hanging with them. You see our leader just up the road.
2.1 seconds still. Lazier a little bit quicker this section for the time being after what we just seen in the bus stop. We're running an apology over the radio coming from Gary Freeman, this 666 machine. But I was just about to say, even in the midst of that race in Nürburgring, some of the drivers taking part in that, mind you. It's been an intriguing time in that you only had half the field even make it to the checkered in those races. One of the GR86s only won on the lead lap. In turn, a lot of those drivers looking to keep it clean tonight at Daytona in contrast.
Well, and I think the one thing the drivers have going for them is Here at Daytona, the walls are a little bit further away. The curbs are a little bit more friendly, although Christian Youngwell, I think, would argue that point. It's a little bit more of a forgiving racetrack, and yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. So far, it looks like I've got everybody in the GT3 field -1 on the lead lap currently.
So 2+ seconds cut into by Blake Reynolds in the past couple laps, partly with traffic, but partly just on raw pace in this section. Lazier just lost 2/10 just by that run to the bus stop.
Also, talking about pace, I want to keep watching these GTP cars, but Christian Youngwell, remember he spun there lap 2. He has consistently been the fastest GT3 car on the track. He's made his way back up into the 6th place position overall in GT3, and there's still plenty of time left for him to keep on chugging.
Take a look at some of the other battle groups meanwhile. See how some of the traffic's starting to come into play. Christian Youngwell breaking away from Tim Brokaw right now. Trevor Greenfield is 2 laps down, mind you. Already at least 1 lap, should say, to the class members. But for Tim Brokaw, also a very solid night in the AM competition. He's been increasingly scoring more and more consistent points. At the start of the season, in the first 3 total races, it's including the Road America Sprint, the feature Road America, and the Round 2 Sprint at Sebring. He only scored a combined total of just about 23 points. Since then, he's been scoring double-digit points every single round, no less than 13 points.
A championship charge, is that what you call it?
I think that's a good saying, yes. By the way, Kevin Fanning, as you just seen, passing Lance Nazier.
To talk about this specific battle, remember, Ray Kingsbury was in front of both Nazier and Fanning. Lap 11, he actually had a slowdown penalty. He cut too much of the final curb on the bus stop, had to give up a lot of track position. So now Ray Kingsbury at the end of this 3-car train again.
Chugga chugga choo choo through the infield. After all, it's so critical just to be able to hit your marks in this part of the track, because if you can't, as we've seen over the years, it doesn't really matter if you're good in a straight line. If you can't turn a corner, you lose so much ground. Speaking of losing ground, Lazier losing his buffer time. Here comes Blake Reynolds now as they reach the back end of the traffic for the 2nd time.
This is starting to get a little bit spicy out there. You got the GT3 cars, as you see Flynn go to the inside here in turn 6, but really Blake able to run a more optimal line and have a better exit. This race could be on.
That's the question. Is this the fuel mapping? Is this the raw pace? Blake Reynolds wants to go. He's caught up to his teammate. Only about 20 minutes off the clock. Lazier leads them on through. The teammates 1-2. Still 2 more cars to reach before they get to clean traffic again.
Nice run through the bus stop from our leader, Flynn Lazier. However, the number 66 that we're riding on board with, he's got the power of that slipstream down the entire straightaway. Lazier looks like he's going to catch a sniff from some GT3 cars, help himself out a little bit.
And hurting a little bit more so. No, Reynolds actually sending it into the corner to use that as an advantage, if anything.
That was Youngwall and Son that they just went past, and you're right. Looks like Blake Reynolds definitely brought his A game here to Daytona. He's turning up the pressure.
Down to 2/10 once more. Still a decent amount of time until that halfway point. 3 more cars to deal with before they get to the next buffer. Keep in mind, one of them is a teammate at least, so now it's the question of getting through cleanly.
Speaking of that time, we're going to be approaching that pit window. Still got about 10 minutes left, but time to start thinking about it.
Mind you, we've already 15 total laps, including this lap. We'll see how many times these drivers will have to stop and turn. Normal fuel capacity, only about 40 minutes on its own.
And I think that fuel capacity, it's going to be a talking point, because if you're out front and not able to save any fuel, what are you burning in comparison to somebody like Blake Reynolds that might be able to lift and coast a little bit here in the draft?
About to say that might part of be the factor. That's why I was thinking of the modes and the mapping, because of that advantage there. Is it really beneficial to pull away 2 seconds when you know it can put you off cycle by possibly a half lap?
Of course, that's always going to be the argument, how much do you save versus how much raw pace do you put out there, and what are the tools that you have at your disposal to help with that, and ultimately, what will be the winning strategy out of them all?
Still in the patience mode. Keep in mind, in GT3, Crossgrove still has a massive cushion to answer that part of the equation, 0.2 a lap quicker than everybody else currently. You're fanning Ray Kingsbury, they only are a close grouping for the time being. Almost looking like Lazier's starting to kick it up a notch now that Reynolds is starting to kick it up a few notches.
The data always tells, Justin, and looks like last lap, 31.8 from our leader. His fastest was a 31.5, so he's within 1/4 of a second of his fastest pace all night long.
So an estimated 42 laps to go for this class here today. With them being teammates, this also has to play into the factor of trying to help each other a little bit here. Make sure this buffer increases in turn, make sure you don't cause an incident amongst yourselves. After all, it's been such a dominant season in the prototypes as a result of the Penguin RC simulation machines in GDP. Speaking of the battle we talked about with the Zero Fanning and Kingsbury, a little bit more calmer now. Zero Monsters with experience working with drivers like Blake Reynolds through Dead Zone Racing in the past. Currently, still not able to break away from the rest of this pack and not really chip into that gap Crossgrove's built up.
It's still a lot of racing left, would be my only 2 cents here to give away. Cody Crossgrove has not been able to do any fuel save up front, but he's only 4 seconds up the road, and trust me, if you just even miss your marks on pit road with the stopping too long in your pit box, have to back it up, all of a sudden that 4 seconds can evaporate.
Look for the back end of this grouping. And the funny thing is, when it comes to Nazir, was first interactions with him during the NASCAR competition. His middle name, mind you, is Lance. His first name is Justin. I thought they were 2 different people when I first met him. Times change.
Well, and, I get confused myself because, sometimes they go, well, he obviously goes by Justin, but here on Time and Scoring, it also shows Lance. So sometimes it's the number, sometimes it's the last name, but it's always that Mercedes out there.
I mean, I wasn't talking about the time. Either way, it's been a good time for Lance whenever we've seen him on the racetrack, I will say. He only runs the endurance race, it seems, this season. Oh, side by side between the back grouping, meanwhile, Fanning, Ray Kingsbury side by side. Kingsbury looking for leapfrog again. Fanning pinched off. Kingsbury up the track. Better run and turn for Fanning to try and clear, but the preferred line still for Kingsbury into the International Horseshoe.
Yeah, can he keep the nose tucked down to the apex, put the power down coming off of turn 3 there? Looks like he does. Ray Kingsbury back in front of Kevin Fanning. So remember, Ray had that slowdown penalty, put him as the caboose in the train while he's working his way up to first class.
Still near back and forth amongst them for the 3rd step of the podium in the Pro Class for the GTs today. By the way, just received word in what happened to John Marshbanks. He's 12 laps down, last on the racetrack currently. The reason he ended up going in and out on the pit lane so many times in the 30 car tonight is, in his words, his iRacing decided to run on a single monitor for this race. So, for those who may have noticed Marshbanks off and on the track, he had to leave the sim several times, Joey, to make sure he had his display settings working properly so he can see where he was going on the racetrack.
Yeah, probably looking like this for the most part out there.
Yeah, no, seriously, it would be.
Yeah, it really would be. And so here in the virtual world, there's failures of that type. You know, in the real world, we're used to seeing car failures, whether that's an engine or brakes or something. But here in the virtual world, we have to deal with hardware of our own type. That's PC, that's monitor issues, that's wheel connections, all sorts of different stuff.
4 different, make it 5 different attempts to try and connect. For those, again, wondering how that comes into play, if you have a triple monitor set, it's a much different FOV setup compared to a single monitor. You can tell why with the spread in turn in the cockpit. Speaking of things with the spread, it's not spreading apart amongst the top 2 still. Right now, Blake Reynolds still within the draft. He picked up 3 more tenths on Flynn Lazier. They have traffic to deal with, though, in Daniel Coletta.
Daniel Coletta, a new driver to this series, staying down on that yellow line, doing a perfect job as these 2 leaders scream by at nearly 200 miles an hour here at Daytona.
Eventually, the green light's got to go because we're at a full load to fuel. Just 8 minutes out or so from the pit window, in theory.
It's a chess game, right? Are you saving? Are you running your raw pace? Who's going to blink first? What's it going to be?
And that's the toughest part about the timing of half. Whoa, that was close with Mofta. I think Mofta tried to pull over and nearly come to a stop to let him go there.
I think I mentioned it earlier. When you're these GTP cars, you always have to be on your tippy toes ready for anything that's going on out there. And Flynn Lazier, plenty of experience both in the virtual world and the real world dealing with that traffic.
Yeah, that has to help. Oh, and the pit window is open. Lazier just said now he's pitting this time by. Expecting potentially Blake Reynolds to come in. 21 laps the cap, and there's your answer. 33 minutes. Expect one more stop to get it to the end. In comes Lazier, in comes Reynolds. Pit window's open for the prototype cars tonight.
I was curious that, we heard it might even stretch to 40 minutes, but these 2 cars coming down 32, 33 minutes into the race, and now we're going to see if there's any sort of difference in those fuel fill times between the number 66 or our leader.
Also in this time, Robert Lowry, Daniel Coletta also coming on in. Him already up on the jacks. Gonna be pretty close this race off pit road. Reynolds gained a decent amount of time on that pit entry. Steers off. Blake Reynolds. Reynolds is off earlier. Lazier adding a little bit more gas, it looks like. Reynolds takes the lead.
Look at the big wiggle of the tail from all of that tire slip coming out. But we got to remember, both of these cars now on cold tires.
Interesting enough, both of them waiting till the green cone, making sure they're good to go on the limiter to prevent a speeding penalty. And that's an interesting mark at Daytona with this setup. In the past, you would think it would be before they get to that bend. In iRacing now, it appears, it's right at the end of the access road, the speed limit. That's why the limiter was stayed on there.
Yeah, and that's actually where they have it now, is pretty much all the way at the end of that pit lane wall. You're on a pit lane speed limiter all the way through the access road.
Trouble, Robert
like
Lowry!
forever.
Lowry coming out of the pits has just spun it through the International Horseshoe and into the wall!
Talk about a huge off. You see the skid marks through the grass. just had a cold tire moment through the dog leg, and wow.
Straight out of the pits, straight after that International Horseshoe, in fact. Looks fine to start. And then it's one of the wildest rides you may see. All right, compromising the line and bye-bye.
Yeah, you know, he had to be on the inside of the GT3 car, which I don't think he had to. He probably could have lifted, but you never want to. Combine that with clipping that inside curb, cold tires, bad recipe.
And keep in mind, when it comes to the grass, you could slide a long time with there being no grip there. Lowry just showcasing that right there. First meatball flag of the race. Lowry trying to drive it to pit lane still, in fact. And still a half a track to be able to do so. By the way, GT3 leaders coming in right now. Crossgrove, Ray Kingsbury, Kevin Fanning are all in the pits as Lowry. I'm not sure where he's trying to go at this point outside the pits.
I think he might have turned that into a Pro 2 truck if I've ever seen it happen.
Oh, and this is going to be rough on the bank. He nearly upped the track. No one else around Lowry, and again, not in the safety car period yet. Pit stops underway, meanwhile, scheduled.
Well, Cody Crossgrove just came off of the jack stands. Look at this. Josh Ondo's a lap car, so he's going to get out of the way there of our overall leader, Cody Crossgrove. So Cody came in about 4.5 seconds in front of our second place runner, and looks like it stayed pretty stable between himself and Ray Kingsbury, who's actually gone around Kevin Fanning, and Lance Nasir still on the racetrack.
Gonna say this, a huge thing to be able to move that to the realistic location for the cone, because in the past, remember, on iRacing, several drivers would speed up and then hit that tire barrier or hit that wall out of the pit lane.
Yeah, it happens in real life too. A buddy of mine, Dion von Moltke, classic one, drove a Daytona prototype, cold tires, tried to turn it, and right into that pit lane wall.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Justin Nazir wants them stretching out. Nazir coming into the lane. 007 machine. Not also 007 paint scheme-esque tonight, but very much so quick on the track. Not going to be easy to catch up to Crossgrove, though, with the gap nearly about 10 seconds.
You're right, it is an uphill battle, and I would say maybe the only thing here that Nasir's got going for him is he is able to go an extra lap. That usually equates to a little bit of track position gain out there, so just keep on chugging. The other one is JJ Wang out there in the Ford. He made it an extra lap. He's coming down pit lane right now. Give a shout out to the only Ford GT. You don't see the old Ford too much anymore.
Talked about this a fair bit throughout the season, the work the Ford's put on in. Crossgrove now taking over the overall lead once again in the GTs. Lance Nazir, a 30-second pit stop, just about everybody in the 30-second range. As a matter of fact, with how well the pit exit was, just about able to break up some of the gaps. Kevin Fanning losing ground after the pit exits. Now it's battling for second with Ray Kingsbury. No Fanning to deal with now.
Ray Kingsbury really capitalizing on that pit stop cycle. Was able to leapfrog Nasir right there despite the Mercedes going an extra lap, and think Nasir's just got to be careful. Remember, you got some cold tires underneath you. Kingsbury has a lap on his tires, so just be careful. Warm them up a little bit.
So played forward. Just about 5 minutes away from the window. Already our first pit stop's completed. During the safety car is on the cusp of things, though. We'll see and wait for the command fully. Here's the big thing about the positioning of that. That's going to be helpful for drivers like Yunwall, keep in mind, who at the incidents early and are on the recovery drives. And now Brandon Lambert starting to get ready and has now officially called it. Safety car has now been called. Or at least an attempt to. The drivers, I don't think, realize he tried to call it. Now it's called.
Yeah, I think they'll get the word of it. And actually, interesting about this, Ray Kingsbury was side by side with Justin Nasir as that safety car was coming out. I think I also saw Lowry going around, but that's a separate class car. But looks like Nasir does yield that position to Kingsbury.
So the safety car situation underway. Pits are closed during the safety car period. At least one driver is already asking for a lap back. We'll see how things play out here. And the answer, by the way, is yes, because of the caution. That's a very much possibility for Lau. So, as we all situate ourselves here, Lazier, Reynolds, Wetz, the top 3. Malolo, Lowry, top 5. Beaver out in the class. Crossgrove, Kingsbury, Lazier, Fanning, Yunwald, the top 5 GT. Son Brokaw, 1, 2 in AM. Mofta, 3rd in AM class, all the way back in 10th overall. So this is going to be a few minutes to be able to think about the plays here. Depending on when the safety car period ends, it could be an interesting call if you were to top off, or get a chance to top off.
Yes. Okay. I'm happy you brought it up. I love talking strategy. That's what I do. For some of these GT3 cars in the back, the ones that made it that extra lap, Nasir, Wong in the Ford, it puts them in a very interesting position. With these safety car laps going this long, only at about 55 miles an hour, when are we going to go back green? It should be about, I would estimate, 40 minutes remaining, maybe 42 minutes, depending on how many laps there are. That's right on the edge of how far they took it in that first fuel stint.
So we'll see. We'll very much see how this all goes. Of note, despite having the pits closed, Trevor Greenfield and Daniel Coletta both deciding to pit, interestingly enough. So 2 of the Simply Inspired Coloca cars coming out of the pit lane. Despite it closed, the pit lane is opening this upcoming time by.
I have to go through the rule book, see how they handle it all. However, I know that they've got the admins. I know that they are able to handle everything going on the racetrack right now. And it's nice to see, because this isn't the easiest thing to do on the admin side without the help of the actual iRacing safety car.
Takes a lot of commitment, dedication, sportsmanship amongst each other. By the way, one of the cars who just completed pit stop service, Daniel Coletta, just hit the wall. But outside of that, we're still outside a pit window by a decent margin for the GDPs. However, with the timing of the pace lap, it could be close for GT in that they win about 35-36 minutes. Could they save 4 minutes of fuel here? And it looks like some of the prototypes are going to top off, including Reynolds. An interesting call here.
I'm not sure why Flynn Lazier stayed out. So you just mentioned it. No matter what, they have to come again, right? It's not like they're going to miraculously make it from here. However, these cars that just came down pit road, they're getting a full tank of gas. When they come down again, they are going to have to take a significant less amount than our leader, Flynn Lazier.
An 8-second pit stop taken there. Chris Wetz and Justin Malillo at least 20-plus seconds up on the jack, so they took tires. Only a top off for Blake Reynolds. Only one GT pit. Mikolajczyk, the only driver electing to come down for service there in the entire class. That's intriguing.
Yeah, and what is still on the table is when they go back to green, if the pit lane is open, That is another option, is to come down immediately when you're going back to green. And I say that because it's kind of like a halfway between green flag and a full course yellow stop, where you're not fully up to speed. You can still take advantage of that slower warm-up pace. Still a gamble. Might work.
The full turn. By the way, Michelangelo, I should rather say, experience as a series admin through Lights Out Racing, for reference, by the way. Regards to his background, more so in favor of the 1987s per driver bios. All with a designer, accountant, and master sergeant joining together technically for a group. But as the drivers situate themselves, Daniel Coletta is having a time during the pit window, by the way, in the safety car. He just spun it again, catching the field. Everybody else is in the queue except for him and Freeman.
Curious to see how long they're going to run the safety car for. Now, I do see that the speed has picked up on the pace of what they are doing out there. So I'm curious, are we going to be going back to green here soon, or are we just shortening some of these laps up a little?
Originally, the plan was to start this upcoming time by. Drivers were told before in the drivers' meeting today to use the NASCAR restart box. So that's where the blue logos with the white text are. Lazier still warming things up. Green, 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 back it away. Just past halfway mark. And a lot of tiptoeing amongst those prototypes off to the start box. The GTs have a much longer wait to get going.
Right now is when the GT3s are just hitting that restart zone. Cody Crosgrove actually with a nice clean restart in front of the GT3 field. I've actually got my eye on Christian Youngwall in the number 55, already moving to the inside of Brian Son, who I believe had a little bit of a problem there in turn one.
Son losing tons of ground, in fact, to Youngwall as a result of said trouble in the in and out. International Horseshoe now already having a gap of nearly 2-3 seconds. Some battling towards the back of the grouping. Marchbanks is around again.
Unfortunate there, and I believe Daniel Coletta at the back of the field, Josh Ondo, and John Marchbanks just getting tipped around in that Audi. A little bit of deja vu from what we saw earlier.
Let's take a look. Already things stacked up in the first place. Just behind one of the Fords. Things look fine until right here. Boop. And a bang. And a zing.
The tiniest of taps, but apparently that Ford has got some muscle.
After all, it is a muscle car.
You are right. And actually, Ray Kingsbury has taken advantage of this yellow flag. He has caught up to Cody Crosgrove because of it, and now we've got a race for our overall lead between these two BMWs.
Big on RC simulation, teammates looking to scrap it out. Kingsbury gets a chance to show the cards, and now the bump draft comes into play. This is a common strat amongst teammates, mind you, to help pick the speed up and take that energy somewhere.
See, the only thing that you got to be careful about with the bump drafting is lining it up and also making sure that the impact isn't too big, because you can cause damage. And right behind this, between Nasir, Fanning, and Youngwall, we are side by side coming out of turn 3. Christian Youngwall in his silver and purple Audi starting to make his way up through the field.
We've had an air crash. Daniel Coletta, Josh Ondo have now crashed. Still keep going though, as they're those cars, some of them not going. Not the greatest of times as well. First of all, not sure how he made the corner.
We saw the F-Zero point of view. Well, that was the F-Zero chopper cam, and oh, that's a tough impact for both of those cars. Driver's left wall.
It's not been pretty for Daniel Coletta. Once again, Daniel Coletta enter this corner. Fair bit back. Talk about brakes being good there. Would have been a perfect move except for that.
And these cars, they're carrying a ton of speed through the S's. You don't realize how loaded up in those switchbacks, the transitions really play havoc on vehicle dynamics. You can lose the car quite easily.
We keep going. Flameless Zero and Blake Reynolds once again pulled away from the rest of the prototype field. Cody Carsgrove, Ray Kingsbury doing the same in the GT3 field. There is an important note though. The recovery driver Christian Yunwall has now seen the 55 move up to third overall. Need to close up about 4 or 5 seconds plus to get up to the top 3 again after that spin for the lead.
The only difference I'm noticing between the front 2 and then the second pack of 3 here, Justin, is this second pack of 3, they're kind of scrapping amongst themselves. While you called it, our front 2 BMWs, they're working together. And so there's definitely a speed difference. Our front 2 cars, 43.8. Christian Youngwall, 44.4 that last time by.
We already seen this pretty clear. They want to keep Yunwall away. But again, do you blame them? Because Yunwall has won a grand total of 8 of the 9 races this season.
Oh, he's been on fire. And, I mean, he's had a couple mistakes earlier this race and, you know, didn't get caught by the safety net of the safety car, but it definitely helped him along, and here he is right back in contention of it all.
Good time to mention, by the way, these drivers racing for the overall championship, which includes $75 credit towards orders through Penguin RC Simulation. As well, when it comes to the classes, $15 credits and guaranteed free shipping. Now, for those who don't know Endurance Guards, that company, a sim racing company, an RC store. So they sell both things. As a matter of fact, one of the competitors tonight, Ray Kingsbury, talked about in the driver's meeting how he just picked up a steering box from Penguin RC Simulation. So a lot of happy customers there. If you want to join that list, go to penguinrc.com for more info. And the funny thing is, the boss man from that grouping, Brian Son, is still your RAM points leader and race leader for the class.
Oh, and Brian's doing a fantastic job. You know, he is leading that AM class 6th overall in the GT3s from what I'm seeing on timing and scoring. Although he does have a fight on his hands because Tim Brokaw right on his back bumper for that AM lead battle.
Keep an eye on that one, still keeping an eye on these leaders. How difficult is it to be able to catch up from another draft pack, though, at Daytona, based on your experience? And what can you do to catch up to another pack?
It's tough. And at times, it just seems like you're doing laps out there. But you just have to focus on not making any mistakes. The cleaner you are out there, the better off you are. And I'm noticing our 2 BMWs, when they get up and start pushing, Justin, they're at 181 miles an hour coming through our tri-oval here. Christian Youngwall, the Audi, with no help, tops out at 177. So he's 4 miles an hour slower than those BMWs on the straightaway.
By the way, that M-Class battle, I'm still staying single file for now. Same set for the overall lead. In the next few minutes, though, traffic expected to be dealt with when it comes to these drivers. Just a couple times, though, in this regard. for these final few minutes here, or final 36 minutes, it should be worth noting. How can you utilize that to your advantage is a question, because Lazier and Reynolds are almost there.
Can be tricky, and I think that Blake Reynolds is actually in the more advantageous position right now. Justin, remember, he came down and took fuel during that full course yellow, so when both of these cars, when that pit window opens up, I expect both of them to come at the same time, and I expect Blake Reynolds to have a much shorter stop.
That is a huge, huge thing about this race. Lazier has led much of the way, but again, that difference, keep an eye on, might even be a lap difference, if not two, which is going to be huge too. By the way, for those wondering why the interval just increased, because Ferrari and Ford, that's why. Not the movie, the two cars, Ferrari and Ford. I know it's the other way around, but I was trying to make a pun.
It's okay, I get it over here.
But still, it's interesting to keep an eye on some of the drivers tonight because, again, lots of interest from some drivers to be able to join into this campaign. We mentioned the Ferrari amongst those with some of the contact earlier. We mentioned the Ford amongst those with some of the contact earlier. Just trying to bide their time at this point to close out this season here. Same said for these prototypes with the 2-second gap now. Blake Reynolds struggling to get through some of these cars.
See him lose about 2 seconds to Flynn Lazier as they're trying to make their way through the GT3 field. And actually looks like Flynn is going to catch this pack of GT3 cars at just the right time, get by him on the straightaway.
Keeping an eye on the next pack they're dealing with right now. It's the same pack as before. It's Yunhua, Nazir, and Fanning. Still pretty close amongst this grouping. Nazir staying tucked behind Yunhua. Last time by a 10th loss by Christian Yunhua. And that's showing all in the near checkup. That's Blake Reynolds, nearly back into the back end of his oval teammate.
Getting held up even more. I mentioned he lost about 2 seconds in the infield. Well, look at this. The gap is growing to about 3.5 seconds. And if I'm Flynn Lazier, I'm saying, all right, time to turn on the rockets. Let's throw down some qualifying laps. This might be the opportunity that you need to keep that distance between yourself and the teammate with the fuel fill difference.
And remember, Nazir went a lap further than everybody else in the top 5 overall. That might be a huge, huge thing to consider here for the later stages, for the time, possibly a couple seconds difference in the box. That might actually be the play there, Joey. A couple seconds might get him to the lead grouping.
It definitely can. And honestly, I'm surprised we haven't seen the GT3 strategy cards be laid out on the table. With 32 minutes remaining, we are well within their fuel window, so who's going to be the first to blink?
Keeping an eye on the Penguin RC twins. Teammates still lined up with Stirrup. Oh, and trouble on cue. The Ford. Wayne is around. And Wayne has just towed the 00 with back-end damage and no more rear wing on the car. So the original main and tail machine no longer has a tail.
He has a big wiggle coming out of the dog leg, and I'm not sure if he lifts. Looks like he gets on the brakes way early to save the car, and unfortunately Marchbanks was right behind him. Gave him a big old shove.
Remember, Marchbanks was spun around by that car before. Intention or not, it's just coincidental.
I don't think there is anything malicious there, Justin. I saw that the Ford had a huge wiggle coming out of the dog leg, and I think that he lifted, probably got on the brakes early to save the car, and unfortunately Marchbanks just really had nowhere to go.
Sometimes it just works out that way. Still, gap ever increasing. Well, last time it was a 1-second loss, in fact, for the leaders, but they did have to deal with some traffic management for a bit. Outside of that, status quo, still rolling. Of note, though, the 177 significant damage. Mikolajczyk, significant damage to the front of the Ferrari, has just had to pit.
I've been noticing that Paul has been in a battle there with Trevor Greenfield in that Audi, hanging out around the top 10 in our GT3 class, and unfortunate, little trouble late in the race.
Take a look. This is where this comes into play. It be in the infield. This was a battle at the time for 8th in car class, should say, but about 6th in the pros.
Side by side here into turn 1. Wonder if this is going to be another incident in the S's that we saw a little bit earlier. Yep, sure enough, just Paul. I mentioned those switchbacks. The car is so loaded up there, they can really catch you out.
Let's take the fast repair. Remember, that was the only car who topped off in that class. Same time we show that replay, Gary Freeman, who's not been having a fun night, it seems, going around in the 666 again.
I'm looking, I think, actually, Christian Youngwall is in the pit lane. I'm sorry, I was catching up on my side of things, still looking at some stuff a little bit further back, but our leader coming down into pit lane. This is the BMW you mentioned through the bus stop. Let's see exactly what happened there.
Well, it was in the in and out, the incident, but you're right about the pit stop, though. Malillo opens the window amongst the prototypes who topped off. That's an RGT also coming in, and Youngwall with the 14-second stop. Now that could be interesting. Oh, in trouble in front of Flynn Lazier. Lazier just had to dodge a very loose John Marchbanks. Marchbanks nearly wrecked in front of the leader.
Now Flynn's having to go to the low side of GT3 cars coming out of turn 4. Always an interesting move, and I think this is exactly what you were just mentioning, Justin, here into the bus stop.
It's not been a good night for him, and this could have been much worse. I don't think that does any justice on that.
No, I think you'd probably have to ride on board with Flynn to really see what happens, because the Audi has a huge wiggle, and all of a sudden the closing rate. Oh yeah, which way do you go?
Lazier losing only about half a second or so after that dodge. Still able to keep going, both of them. They both walk away clean. Finally, in all of this, Chris Wetz can be on the podium if that 71 stays out of trouble the rest of the way. That would be one of the best races for him all year.
Keeping it clean out there in the number 71, getting up onto the banking one more time here at Daytona. And you're right, this would be a fantastic finish. You saw started 4th, so had a decent qualifying effort, but it's all about keeping it together here in these endurance events.
One of the true North esports drivers, been in the top 3 of the past 4 overall races. That includes the features in the sprints, mind you. But keep in mind, part of that task has been simple. Keep it clean. Guess what? He's kept it clean at tracks like Long Beach, we've seen, where he's been able to take advantage of mistakes by drivers like Lowry.
And sometimes that's what it takes. You know, in a championship, it's not always race wins that get you there. It's those consistent finishes.
As we discussed that point, by the way, Brian Sawn electing to come in. Now it's the question, when do the pro competitors from Penguin RC Simulation come in? Still lockstep together. Lance Nazier is coming, though. Now that he's had Youngwall pit in front, Lazier on his own is catching these two.
It's kind of plateaued for the two BMWs out in front. I've been watching their lap times. They were at high 43s when we started this green flag stint. they've fallen all the way to mid 44s now. So I don't know if it's Nazir necessarily picking up the pace, but I actually think it's those BMWs falling off up front.
Tim Brokaw, AM leader, now in the 111. Everybody else still going, so different strategy plays. Normally you see a designated minutes to go stretch at the end of the window. Not quite as simple today. Remember, the most the GT3s can go on gas about 20 laps before they pit. That doesn't include the fact this stint has now a safety car period for most of the drivers. The prototypes, the max they can go 21 as well.
And just really interesting to see that the pit window's open. I'm surprised that they haven't come down, and maybe the logic here is, I know that in the sim, the lighter you run the fuel load, definitely it equates to lap time. You go faster when you have that light fuel load.
Such a big play. A lighter car is a quick car. A heavy car is a bogged down car in some people's viewpoints, depending on the car type. Here's the thing though. You still have to be very talented to be able to take advantage of that on light fuel. And in some circumstances, older tires, because it's very tricky. Here's the thing that's very tricky in all this. As we take a look at Lazier, who is nearly on the cusp of a window here for a pit stop. Yunwall might be in a great shot at the 15 seconds. Here's the thing. Son also went 13 seconds on the pit stop. So, how close realistically will this end up being, is the question.
It's all those fuel fill times, and you're right. You read that perfectly. Brian Son has been the other one that's come down, himself and Christian Youngwall, which we're watching right now. And you look at Christian's lap times, 44.2. He's currently the fastest GT3 car on the racetrack, and you compare that to our leaders who have been putting down mid 44s recently, and man, it's going to be close between this Audi and those pair of BMWs that have been working together. It's all about that fuel fill time.
Wall wants a shot. Chris Wetz is in the pit lane, by the way, right now. One car nearly takes a shove through the grass. That was Daniel Coletta once again learning how to drive the Daytona International Speedway road course.
Shout out to Daniel, though. It looks like he is a few laps down, maybe a handful of laps down, so hasn't had the best of nights, but I know it is his first race out here in this Sim Car Series. Always good to see fresh new faces.
Give credit again. It takes a lot of effort to be quick in this series, especially when you have some of the top drivers in all of sim racing in a couple cases here in the field. See how things play out long term. By the way, out of the race officially now, Nikolajczyk parked it. He's now out. Lazier, one lap out from the estimated pit mark. Compared to the last stint, we'll see if Lazier comes down. It looks like he'll stretch it at least one more time.
Well, and look at the last lap time difference now. They've caught up and made that up here as they crossed the line, but Blake Reynolds, he has shrunk that gap back down.
For those just tuning in here on FDFGG, Sim Car action at Daytona International Speedway. Continuing on with our second endurance round of the season for Penguin RC Simulation Grand Am action. Flynn Lazier and Blake Reynolds, the 1-2 cars in GDP. Blake Reynolds topped off on fuel during the safety car period. Flynn Lazier did not. Lazier is about one lap away from the estimated edge of the window. To make it to the end of gas, Reynolds can go up to another 5 laps. By the way, in GT3, Pro, Crossgrove, and Ray Kingsbury have broken away from the rest of the pack. Lance Nazier, the next closest, is closing in on them, mind you, with their window about to close in. All while Brian Son leads the AM class over Tim Brokaw after an 8-second difference in the pit stop delta between Son and Brokaw in their service moments ago. So that's to catch you up. 21 minutes on the clock. Pit stops on the verge of coming in for a majority of the field.
We've been talking about that pit stop strategy. It's all going to be in the fuel fill times, both classes in that case. Blake Reynolds, how much less fuel? Here comes our leader, Flynn Lazier, into pit lane.
Right on cue, Lazier coming in. Went all the way under the yellow line out of turn 4, NASCAR 4 router to get underneath Fanning, and now Reynolds has the lead. This is the big question. How much fuel can Lazier, or does he have to put in, rather?
Stops on his marks, and ooh, look at this. Up on the jacks. That means going to be taking tires here for Flynn Lazier. Looks like he ran this thing dry, going to take a fresh set and pretty much run qualifying laps to the end.
So a lengthy pit service for Flynn Lazier and the 22-second mark. Now we'll have to see what Reynolds does. Reynolds had lost a little bit of time in some of the traffic right before all things broke out here for the pit stop deltas. Like Reynolds, by the way, losing a lot of ground this lap, a lot of traffic to deal with. Cosgrove and Kingsbury both having to drive around.
We are on the same page. Yes, Blake got caught up going into turn 3. He also got caught up going into turn 6. So having to deal with those GT3 leaders and those battles, not helping out the 66. Now, I'm curious. If I'm calling the strategy, I'm bringing the 66 right now. Let's level out the strategy. Let's see where they come out. Does he stay on the racetrack or does he come in?
The answer is he stays out on the racetrack. No peel off for Reynolds. Now it's the question if we see this being similar to what Chris Wetz and Justin Malloy did during the pit stop cycle. They're the closest test because at the time of the safety, up to 14 laps taken for Chris Wetz before he just pit a couple laps ago. They had a 14-second stop, Chris Wetz did. Justin Malloy, 10 laps, had a 13-second stop. That's our closest math in terms of what the other competitors have done and what's going to be a similar stint length right now for Blake Reynolds. If he ends up following the same logic there, we're talking a big advantage here.
It could be, and if, in my opinion, the sooner he comes, that shorter the pit stop is going to be. Just leave the set of tires on it, get in, get enough gas to get you to the line, and get back out there.
Reynolds expected to go for at least another 2-3 laps at minimum. NASCAR driver, going to roll forward, looking over to Cosgrove. Meanwhile, Ray Kingsbury has dropped back a couple times as of late. But these drivers, too, are just about in the window. Nazir has started to lose a lot of ground as of late, except for last lap with the traffic. Everything's still up for grabs. That's the tough part about today.
I've still got my eye on the 55 of Christian Youngwall. I know that he's nowhere near the front of the pack, but he's the only GT3 car, well, himself and Brian Son, as well as Tim Brokaw. They've already made those pit stops, so their bed has been made. It's all about laying down the perfect laps right now, and the BMWs up front have definitely got the message that the Audi is on the move. They've picked up the pace. However, it's still kind of a duel back and forth each lap.
By the way, Robert Lowry in the pit lane this time. Lowry had spent much of this run at least half a track plus behind everyone else. Still keep an eye on the unwall. An interesting note it's worth noting with some of the drivers on the cold tires. We've talked about how difficult it's been on freshies for some drivers as of late. I've noticed a couple out of the pit lane, like Flynn Lazier just past time, I think it's worth noting, weaving back and forth out of the corners. How normal is that?
In real life, if you're trying to get warm up, yeah, definitely. I don't spend enough time behind the wheel in the sim to know the tire warm-up properties here in that tire model, but yeah, there's lots of things that you can do to put that lateral load in there, just things to gain those temperatures.
We see it a lot in qualifying. Some people call it tire magic. Never in the race before.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I would say, especially at Daytona, especially at night when everything is so cold, You see it actually for a couple laps out there, especially when you get to like that 2 a.m., 3 a.m. time where it's just frozen.
In the lane, it's Blake Reynolds. The money stop for the 66 is on its way. Yunwall making his way through the in and out. Keep an eye on the upper corner of your screen. The reason it's frozen, Reynolds is in the box. That's going to be one to watch. A 12-second pit stop. Blake Reynolds has just completed. Reynolds, he's got a big buffer by over Lazier. How about a near third of the racetrack for Blake Reynolds?
Yeah, and does he get out in front of these GT3 cars? Might get held up just a little bit through the International Horseshoe, but 10-second difference between the two pit stops between Flynn Lazier and Blake Reynolds, and that equates to a whole bunch of track position.
That's a 12-second gap on the racetrack. Now it's the question, what can Lazier here do? Because the most he's been able to pull away is by 2-3 seconds. I don't know if you can gain 12 in 10 laps.
There's no way. You gotta... You don't hope that your teammate has a problem out there on the racetrack, but that is the only way that Flynn Lazier is going to be able to make up that much ground in this sort of time.
By the way, we've had an air crash for Gary Freeman. Freeman is the wrong way around in the bus stop currently. 666 has just towed on the bright side. Good timing because Blake Reynolds was about to enter that corner.
The BMW coming down here into the bus stop. Let's see if he loses a driver's left going in. That can be a common issue, and yeah, it looks like he just got too deep on the brakes, missed that first apex, and can be tough to save at that point.
And for those wondering, yes, that is a mandatory damage flag, a meatball flag, hence the
Here
tow.
comes our leaders to pit lane, Justin. GT3 leaders.
So the GT3 leaders are currently in the pit lane. So as these drivers now situate themselves, now it's where Christian Yunwall is going to cycle. Nazir again stretching. The teammates trying to run through everybody's pit stalls to stay lined up astern.
I'm curious, too. Has Ray been saving gas behind Cody? I would assume that he has. They've been working together on those bump drafts. See if Ray Kingsbury gets by. Looks like Ray does have the shorter pit stop time, so Ray Kingsbury going to leapfrog in terms of the BMWs, and here comes Christian Youngwall across start-finish line. I think the BMWs might keep the lead.
Youngwall matching on pit stop time, in fact. Kingsbury and Cosgrove 13-14 seconds apiece. Christian Youngwall not able to get up to them despite the early pit stop decision.
Those BMWs were just able to work together a little bit more, but this is the other piece to the puzzle. Nasir in the Mercedes going longer like we saw in the first stint. Can this be the moment to capitalize?
Racing the 14 seconds, the most drivers have been able to push. Lance Nazir, though, at least a 1-2 second advantage, or 1-2 lap advantage over the rest of these drivers. Mind you, this is going to be the intriguing part. Is this going to be enough to get him within drafting distance? If he can get in drafting distance, that changes the whole race complexion. There's the pit stop.
Well, not only that, but I think he's going to pop out like right with Christian Youngwall, depending on, of course, this fuel fill time of Nasir in the Mercedes. But if he doesn't get up to those BMWs, I expect him to pop out right here with this 55 Audi.
Cosgrove and Kingsbury are battling back and forth in through the oval. Off and away, Lance Nazir, but Nazir still has to roll his way on the limiter all the way to the green cone. Here we go. There they go. Nazir going to be just about there, and he hits the wall. Nazir's in the wall before he gets to the green cone. Lance Nazir, a scrape, and now some damage potentially to deal with just in drafting distance.
You called it earlier in the race. Look at that, just trying to turn the car on the pit exit and into that concrete wall. I'm curious if there's any sort of damage on the Mercedes.
You can see he was on the limiter. He was trying to push the limit though. But here's the thing. Despite that, he is still within the distance needed to keep up here. 1 second back.
You're right. He actually has done a fantastic job, Nasir, with, call it the overcut, able to save that fuel, go the extra lap or two longer than everybody else. And something else to note, remember how fast this Mercedes has been on the top end.
Teammates scrapped it to swap around last time by. Will they swap it again this time? 10 minutes to go on the clock. 7 estimated laps to go for the GTs. Kingsbury taking a peek. Oh, well, Blake Reynolds with a 9.5 second advantage over Flynn Lazier at the end of the racetrack.
Speaking of those GTP leaders, 10 seconds, it still stayed about the same. Flynn Lazier has closed it in a little bit. But with only about 9.5 minutes remaining, I just don't see that lap time being cut out for Lazier to catch Reynolds.
Lazier has lost touch, though, to these two. The bump draft helping a little bit. Lazier, if anything, is not getting the draft effect he needs to be able to make a pouncing move.
I'm noticing he's right at that buffer, isn't he? He's right at that 1 second range behind these two BMWs, and I feel like maybe if he's able to nail this exit out of turn 6, if he's able to close it into maybe that 0.8, 3/4 of a second, might just help pull him along that much better.
Looking for the back end of Crossgrove. Ray Kingsbury again losing a little bit of touch for the time being. Now they have traffic to deal with because Justin Maluo zipping his way around these cars now. Lowe very quietly running his race today for the FTF Drivers Club. A little bit of a drive to the right.
You kind of run, Nasir gets out of the bus stop. This is the most crucial part of the racetrack, and actually Nasir down to 0.96 behind these two BMWs. However, once these BMWs get linked up, the Mercedes actually losing ground at this point.
They're actually losing a lot of ground down the straight again. A bump draft again for Crossgrove and Ray Kingsbury. 6 estimated laps to go, coming at 8 minutes on the clock. Nazir catching up in the braking zones. The BMW is pulling away down the drafting sections.
It's that same story. I mentioned the mile-an-hour difference. That time, Justin, the BMW's 181 miles an hour top end. Nasir in the Mercedes, 176.
Also critical. And a good comparison for that, taken for the oval side when you think about some of the background of the drivers here too. 1 mile per hour difference on a corner X in qualifying in some cases can be the difference between 1/10 of a second on just the oval side. Now add that up to a road course. You can see where it comes in.
Well, and you talk about 1/10 of a second at coming out of turn 6 or coming out of the bus stop, and that can actually add up to 3/4 of a second by the end of those straightaways. So, yeah, you really got to be on your marks out here.
Under 7 minutes to go on the clock. Penguin RC Simulation drivers thinking a bit. Crossgrove, a little bit of a bubble. Ray Kingsbury still committed to help, though.
This is going to draw in Nasir, though. This might be the opportunity. Now, it's not going to draw him all the way up to the bumper, but it might just be that little bit, that one stair that you need to get going.
Do another good push down the straightaway. Nazir is still quicker overall lap-wise. It's just the interval. That's the major difference marks. And the thing is, when do you go? Eventually, someone will have to go.
Here comes our leader, Blake Reynolds, through this GT3 lead battle. He's got to be careful. He's got to be aware of what's going on the racetrack. Looks like the Penguin cars are going to work together here. Blake Reynolds, our leader, safely through the GT3 battle.
I have to think some communication coming in with Justin Lance Nazir. By the way, the confirmation is yes. Not so much in the same grouping if you're GT versus GTP, it's worth noting. Still, it's important to make sure at least that communication is there. By the way, Blake Reynolds has had 2 seconds cut into by Flynn Lazier again, with 3.5 laps to go.
Not only that gap, but Nasir, fantastic, coming out of turn 6. It's kind of funny, Nasir and Lazier, they sound similar too, don't they? Oh, we got problems in the bus stop. I think that's Lowry off track.
No, it's Justin Malou off the racetrack. Trevor Greenfield doing the same.
Stays out of the way, though. Doesn't affect anybody else. Ooh, I wonder if something broke going in there.
He did have a spin previously in the West Horseshoe, but we keep racing. And all that has seen Lance Nazir close in within 5 car lengths for the battle of the leaders. Malua mows the grass, Nazir mows the gap down. 3 to go.
Here we go. Less than 5 minutes, and we have a race for the lead on our hands with these GT3 cars. Cody Crosgrove out front, Ray Kingsbury second, Lance Nazir in the Mercedes.
Bumper to bumper to bumper. Nazir looking to pounce here. He's fought all race to get here.
And the alternate pit stop strategy, everything is coming together for that Mercedes right now. The 2 BMWs have been working together as teammates to not allow this to happen, but Nazir has hunted him down.
Now the urgency level. Curious if this picks up. Well, it should be with 2.5 laps to go. How do you play this if you're Nazir now?
You gotta first of all evaluate the top end difference here. Looks like all 3 cars, now that they're packed together, are pretty even on that top speed. And let me tell you, that 3rd car in line, it can be very, very frustrating because you have these immense top end speeds, but can't necessarily get the run to do anything. Although, look at this, a really good exit out of the bus stop gives Nazir an opportunity.
Nazir looking for the draft, now looking to peel it up for second. Ray Kingsbury still holding to the bottom, picking up his own toe. Crosgrove trying to play the lines. Nazir starting to pick it up on the back end. 2 estimated laps to go for the class. Nazir with the brakes. Kingsbury on the inside. Nazir way outside looking for the cross-up. Not able to close it in. Not able to make the pass yet.
Oh, just testing out those brake markers. How far can you go in turn 1? It seems like that Mercedes has been aggressive to try to close that gap on these BMWs. And now that he's there, where's that move going to come from? He's definitely been strong into that turn 1 brake zone.
Still working in the line, trying to work the draft. That run through NASCAR 3 and 4 going to be so critical for this class. Expecting the bell lap to come up pretty soon here.
Well, and that's something you really have to watch as the GT3 competitors. Where does our overall leader take the white flag? I don't think it's going to be this lap. I think we're going to get another additional.
Blake Reynolds, with the pace he's put up here, indeed going to potentially, yes, extend this by an extra lap. So this race now will 56 lapper. That means an extra lap to work with for this entire grouping. How does Lance Nazir now play with the extra lap to work with?
And trust me, folks, you better have calculated that extra lap into your fuel calculations if you're these GT3 cars. Oh, you better hope you got enough gas in the tank.
They're giving a little bit more of a buffer this time. Ray Kingsbury, a bump draft to Cody Crosgrove. 2 laps estimated to go now for the class. Lance Nazir again sends it a little bit close. Still no move. Almost looking like the setup time more than anything.
I agree, and the time is running out. I know that we're looking under a minute. They're still going to have to go one more time by the stripe, because I'm looking at our leader, Blake Reynolds, is going down into the bus stop, so he'll be getting the white flag. There's no way he's going to catch this GT3 battle, so another lap and a half for these guys.
I'm just starting to plan things out. Still, Chris Wetz looking to get through them all. Blake Reynolds expecting the white flag this time by. Blake Reynolds holding on to a 5.5 second lead. Lazier has been pushing as hard as he can to try and get up there, but not close enough yet with 15 seconds to go. White flag is up in the air. Final time around. There goes Chris Wetz waiting to get around. Go through NASCAR 1 and 2. No major impediment for the top 3 in the GT3s.
This is a crucial bus stop corner here. Who gets the best exit? Coming out, it's been Nasir really tight and tidy, and once again, actually looks like all 3 of these cars, fantastic exit, pretty even. It's all up to the draft.
Will anybody make a peel out here coming to the white flag for the class? Ray Kingsbury has been very committed to working with his teammate all race. Does this stay the same for another 3.56 miles? Nazir looking to the outside. Thinking about going way wide to try and make a move. Still no move yet.
Doesn't quite get it tucked down to the apex. I think he's just leaving a little bit of time out there in turn 1, but it doesn't matter anymore. He doesn't have to navigate it. This will be the final lap for these GT3 cars. Where can the move come from?
Kevin Fanning, who's on the same cycle as these drivers, just had to pit. How close are these drivers going to be on the gas now?
Here's an opportunity. Everyone stays in line through the West Horseshoe. Another crucial corner, turn 6. Who gets the power down the best? Going out onto the oval.
You know who's got the power down for the checkered? It's Blake Reynolds. Blake Reynolds picks up the W. GTD victory. A strong strategy in the prototype for Reynolds to pick up the class victory over Lazier by 4 seconds. Chris Wentz in third. The battle is on, though, for the GT3s to close out this class. Ray Kingsbury setting it up. Lance Nazir in the popcorn seat. The double toe having to break early.
Oh, I'm surprised Nazir didn't try to pick off Kingsbury going into the bus stop. He's putting all of his cards on the exit, and oh no, Nasir with a huge wiggle. It's going to be between the 2 BMWs.
Ray Kingsbury letting his teammate out to dry, trying to go the long way through the banking. Lance Nazir would draft off both. Kingsbury with the pull down the straightaway. Crossgrove looking to try and get some speed gathered up, not close enough. Ray Kingsbury in the drag race beats his teammate Crossgrove at the line.
Ray Kingsbury's stealing it away from Cody Crossgrove, who led the majority of the race. What a move from the 0-1.
An exciting race for Cody Crossgrove, but a big win for Ray Kingsbury, his first class victory of the season. After coming up just second spot at Sonoma last time out and coming away second 3 times in the season. Brian Son, meanwhile, quietly picks up the M-Class victory yet again. And what is another top 5 overall in car-type finish for Brian Son.
Fantastic drive out there from the 0-3, collecting that AM win in the BMW. It seems like the BMW, the car to have here at Daytona.
Would you believe the last time he ran an endurance race, he was also 5th overall in car-type?
Hey, you know what? As long as you're collecting and standing on the podium spraying the champagne, that's what matters.
Lots to talk about here as we head off to your unofficial race results in turn. After 22 drivers enter, 21 start, a grand total of about 17 finish. Blake Reynolds picks up the victory, 4.2 seconds. Glenn Lazier from 12 seconds back, able to trim the gap by 2/3. Give him huge credit after Reynolds went for the overcut on the top off from the caution period. Chris Wetz picks up another podium in third. Robert Lowry and Justin Malone with the top 5. Aaron Beaver a DNF in car type. Ray Kingsbury in a drag race beating his teammate Cody Crossgrove. The first class victory of the season for Ray Kingsbury. Lance Nazir picks up the third spot. Then you have Christian Yunwall behind them as well, 4th in pro. The AM winner, meanwhile, 10th overall and 5th in car type. Brian Son tied for his highest overall finish of the season.
And in 6th overall in GT3 have Kevin Fanning. Then 2nd place in the AMs, Tim Brokaw. Finishing out the AM podium is Marwin Mofta. We have 14th overall, 9th in class, Trevor Greenfield. Gary Freeman after that, and everybody else here a few laps down. Justin, you mentioned not so many cars on the lead lap. Looks like we got about 8 GT3 cars, a couple, 1 or 2 laps down, and then the rest of these, Josh Ondo, Daniel Coletta, John Marchbanks, Paul Mikolajczyk, and also JJ Wong and Tim Taplin actually not even doing any laps out there that I see.
For Taplin, who did put up times in practice earlier tonight, but hadn't been at the bottom of that board. Top of the board today, though, for the race. Car 66, Blake Reynolds picks up the W. He hoped to pick up the victory today. It's his 2nd victory of the season. Blake, congrats on the W. Talk us through tonight with the differences and strategies between you and your teammate, Flynn Lazier.
Yeah, thank you. Just different strategies. For some reason, Flynn didn't pit under the yellow. He seemed surprised when I pit. I was in the same channel as him, and he was like, "Oh, okay." So, and then he took tires under that last stop. I went, or is that the right word? I didn't take tires under the yellow. I did them on the first stop and just hoped they would hold up at the end. That last run, I came out like 11 seconds ahead of him, and he ran me down all the way to, I think, 4.5. My front tires were really gone, so in those hairpins and the bus stop, I just could not turn. But that gap is what 4 gallons under a safety car looks like.
As well, traffic a huge part of tonight. It seemed like for parts of this race, Lazier had gotten better through the traffic. Then you got better through the traffic. The ebbs and flows of the race, that traffic balance, how was it trying to manage that teeter-totter effect tonight?
It's pretty easy in the infield if the GT cars know what they're doing. The bus stop's really the big one. I have to, instead of braking at the 1, I kind of have to do a rollout at like the 3 all the way in just to make sure I can get a run out. Because if I catch them in the middle of the bus stop, it completely ruins my run all the way from NASCAR 3 to the start-finish line. So that's mainly the big thing. I didn't really get held up too much by that tonight. I know Flynn got a couple times, and that's how I got him. But yeah, great race overall. Good participation in the GTP field. Good podium for Chris Wetz. I'm pretty sure he has more than me this season. I have retired from more events than I would have wanted to this season, so it's good to pick up a win. And shout out to Penguin RC Simulations for sponsoring the series and my vehicle.
Well, to answer your question, you have 6 podiums. He's got about 4 or 5, so you have a +2.
Oh, okay.
So, next time out, though, it's the Brickyard, the road course there for the sprint feature. How do you feel about that racetrack, especially with a lot of the talk about that track recently?
Yeah, it looks fun. We wanted to put it in the month of May somewhere there, so that's why we're running it. But I saw on another broadcast, I have a feeling it was Autobahn actually on FTF. So they ran there, and it looked like a fun combo. So I talked with Ray, and I was like, yeah, let's put it on there. And yeah, we're going there. It should be fun. A lot of straight braking zones to outbrake GT cars, some sweeping corners to have some variety, some patience for the prototypes and the GT cars. But it looks like a good track. It should be fun.
I mean, technically, it's June 1st, the race, so it isn't in the month of May by a day.
We tried.
But
we have to do the off weeks of Road to Pro here. at SimCar. So that's how it lined up.
Either way, it lines up with you in victory lane tonight. Congratulations on the victory, Blake.
Yep. Thank you, Justin.
Blake Reynolds' overall race victory, prototype victory tonight. Well deserved in the end with how things played out tonight. Also amongst those who battled it out tonight, Ray Kingsbury in a drag race picks up a class victory. That going the way of the GT3 pros. He's with Joey.
Ray, congratulations on stealing away that victory. How happy are you right now?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty happy. This is a good team effort. Cody let out a really good race, and I kind of, just followed him, pushed him along. Wasn't really planning on passing him, but I said to him, like, if there was no chance we were gonna drop a 1-2, I would race him for it, but I wasn't planning on it. And then coming out of the bus stop, I had a run, so I just kind of went around the outside. I left him a ton of room because I wasn't gonna wreck 2 team cars coming to the line, but yeah, no, I was pretty pleased with that. It's good to take a win on the season with how competitive it's all been.
Well, and that really was the last half of your race. Talk to me about the first half, because that is a totally different shape. You were really back there in the 4th, 5th, 6th position, trying to get your way up there, and then through the course of good pit stop strategy, also the yellow flag, you found yourself in a very good position and then took advantage of it. But how was your race in the first half of things?
It was pretty good. We got tagged with a slowdown on the first lap, and when you get those slowdowns on the bus stop on the first lap, it's not like a 1-second slowdown, it's more like an 8-second slowdown.
Yep.
So we pulled back up to the main group there besides Cody, and I think we were just behind Lance. I think we passed Kevin, we were just behind Lance. That's just kind of saving a little fuel off them. Just, kind of waiting it out, not overdriving the car. And the caution's coming, so there's no real sense. Pit a lap early so you don't get caught out. And of course, it came out right as pretty much the pit cycle ended. A couple guys got caught out. We didn't. So, that part of the strategy worked. And then we were torn between taking tires, and with Cody and I just being able to kind of run lockstep like that, we didn't need to take the tires because we didn't race each other. We just conserved them. So it all worked out. We managed a nice gap at the end of it all.
Well, and last question I had for you is talking about that strategy. We saw Christian Youngwall, who usually is just way out front in these races, come in and be the first car once the pit stop window opened. You guys opted to run it all the way dry. Is that something just based off of the fuel load and it runs faster, or what was the strategy on running it long versus pitting as soon as the window opened?
Yeah, so I think Christian's strategy was to try to, be in a different traffic flow than us, just be on clean track, try to get that undercut. And honestly, it's a pretty good strat, except that these big long tracks like this, the fuel load definitely helps pace. So, we knew we weren't taking tires. If we were taking tires, we probably would have pitted earlier, but we knew we weren't taking tires. We just stayed out and just took advantage of the fact that we had lower fuel for lighter car for longer than he did, and it paid off because we were clicking off some 43s towards the end of that stint.
Well, fantastic race, Ray. You pulled off a great strategy, a great move to steal away that win, and anybody you want to say hi to?
I mean, I just can't say enough about Cody's driving. It's like we probably wouldn't have won that if we didn't work together. Like, I don't even if he was just out there by himself, I don't think he would have had the pace to keep Lance off of him. And if he wasn't in front of me, I don't think I would have had the pace to keep Lance off me. Because I was pretty quick through the bus stop, but through the infield, like, I think I would have cooked my tires trying to do what Cody was doing. He was really hauling through there. So yeah, no, I think we balanced each other out and probably got the 1-2 because we worked together.
Well, congrats on that win, and that was Ray Kingsbury, driver of the 01, winner of the GT3 class.
Well done in the drag race tonight. Also, well done for Brian Son, an AM class victory going the way of the Penguin RC simulation machine. In fact, all 3 classes won by Penguin RC backed machinery. Brian, how was it for you tonight? Tied for your highest overall finish in the class today.
It was pretty good, actually. I just kind of, after the start, I kind of fell into the place that I was, which was 6th place until Christian spun, and then I was in 5th place for quite a while, and then it was just keeping the pace up and keeping consistent and trying to just hold where I was, and eventually it all came back to me and ended up giving me a 5th place back.
I was about to say, you were saying, sorry?
It was just, the racing was great though. I mean, we had some great battles out there with Tim and stuff for the AM midway through there. We were fighting it out, and I just decided I'd pit early to break the draft, and ended up pulling away when he decided to pit. And that worked. That was basically it for me. You know.
Got to have some more points over in the AM class as well in turn with today. Few rounds to go. Still, lots of action to go. Entering the season compared to now, what has that been like now? Basically leading the charge in the AM class all season.
Better than it's been in the past. It's kind of one of these things where it's like, I know I've been good in the past, or at least decent enough to do this, but I've been putting it together more often now. Like, I think this is the 2nd AM win of this season, where previous seasons I never got one. You know, so it was kind of like, it's just kind of all come together this season, and hopefully it keeps going that way.
Your thoughts on the Brickyard up next?
I'm gonna have to practice that one. I haven't had a whole lot of experience at that track. Happens to be a track that I have had a lot of experience at, so it is one of my better tracks.
So, we'll see how things play out in turn. Congratulations on the AM class victory tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to actually have that, and it was a great night for our team, getting a win in all 3 categories. That was a fun race.
Brian Son, AM class winner. Again, thank you for the time, Brian, as well as to Blake Reynolds and Ray Kingsbury here tonight on FTFGG. An exciting one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. And Joey? Try this question again. Somehow, lots of craziness throughout the night, but in the end, a drag race in one, a fuel strategy in another, and a calm one in the third.
Yeah, you wrapped it up perfectly there. I think Blake Reynolds capitalized on pit stop strategy that Flynn Lazier missed out on. The drag race to the line of Ray Kingsbury beating his teammate Cody Crosgrove, and then just a great AM win from Brian Son out there. Really just a really nice night of racing here at Daytona.
And remember, the next time out when it comes to sim car action in the Penguin RC Simulation Grand Am Series, it's at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course, for sprint and feature action. Start up the month of June. Be sure to tune in June the 1st. Coverage starting at approximately about 8:20, 25-ish p.m. Eastern Time here on FTFGG. On that note, it's time to say goodbye. For Joey Atterbury, for our producer tonight, Kerry Sexton, I'm Justin Prince saying so long. To the rest of your evening, you've been watching SimCar from Daytona.